A couple logistical things as usual. The DVD form for the sessions will be available on the FOSNA website. So if you are still interested in trying to get a hold of sessions on recording, we have that available through the website. We also have boxes around. These evaluation and keep me informed boxes are around the church for you. There should be forms in your packets where you can fill that out and let us know what you think, and let us know if you want to stay in touch. So there will be a follow-up meeting on November 5th for people who are interested, right? You can fill out the Keep Me Informed cards and we'll be in touch that way as well, but you can mark in your calendars that there will be a follow-up meeting on November 5th at the Peace and Justice Center, and if you give us your contact information, we can give you more details on that. Okay, well, I believe that's it on the announcements and logistics, so without further ado, it is my honor. No, that's okay.
People are going to walk down with the forms for ordering DVDs, so you can take a form if you want one.
Okay. No, that's fine. So yeah, it looks like we have a few more hard copy forms for the DVDs, and if you don't get one, that will be available on the website. So I believe that might be it. Let's see. Okay, I think we're good. So it is my honor and privilege to introduce Imam Abdur Araf Campos Marchetti from Santa Fe, and he will give an invocation for us this afternoon. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of God be with you. In 2003, my life was ever changed by two utterly contrasting events, both in a sense traumatic, both exposing the rawness of my humanity and signaling the duality of our human existence. One began with the most vivid dream that I had ever had in my life, that August, a dream dominated by the most beautiful adhan, call to prayer, that I had ever heard, as if sung by angels. Then of a sight of a black cubicle shroud at whose top were golden Arabic letters that I couldn't read or understand at the time. And then prior to my waking, a group of swallows flying around this edifice. Several months later, I had the opportunity to make Umrah, and my dream made total sense. During the month of Ramadan, it was an amazing experience. I experienced the multitude of humanity and a moment that was made clear to me that peace is possible, that peace exists on the earth, that, and I always describe it this way, is as if every issue of National Geographic's was ripped asunder and all of the peoples of the earth were exposed. I saw people from Asia, from Africa, from Europe, from America, from Malaysia, from all the countries of the earth, and we couldn't even speak each other's languages, and yet we were able to exist and coexist together in peace, in a place of worship, in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What a contrast presented to me when several months later, I made a journey to Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and Israel with a delegation with the Fellowship of Reconciliation, with Rabbi Lynn being one of the leaders of that delegation, with a group mostly made of Episcopalian priests and laymen and laywomen, and 2 rabbis. This was an extremely difficult journey for me, for the man who grew up in the projects of Brooklyn, New York. These journeys, this journey, unlike my journey to Mecca, I remember with what I'm going to call reverse dreams and reverse visions, some of them almost nightmarish, of hearing the stories and seeing and hearing the stories of Palestinian mothers crying about their husbands and their sons, witnessing it with their own eyes, being killed, being literally chopped up in Sabra and Shatila in Lebanon. Of waking up with my partner, Ethan, in the middle of the night in Bethlehem, having an Israeli Jeep broadcasting at 3 o'clock in the morning an announcement that we had no idea what it was, but it definitely must have woken everybody up, because it woke us up in our deep slumber. And in the morning, going to Abu and asking Abu, what was that all about? What was that Jeep? What was the announcement that they were making? And he said, they were reminding us, as they remind us every night, of the curfew that we would have the next day. That we can't go to work. That we can't send our children to school. That we can't open up our shops. That we can't go to the hospitals. And if we did, it would be under dire and difficult circumstances. All I could think of was the saying of our dear Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, want for your brother what you want for yourself. I remember Naeem Atiq, who was here this morning, alhamdulillah, saying to us in Jerusalem that it doesn't matter that I have this collar on. It doesn't matter that I'm a priest. When I cross that checkpoint, I'm just another Palestinian. I have to go through the humiliation and the degradation of the checkpoints, just like everyone else. And again, want for your brother and sister what you want for yourself. I witnessed the land being scourged, stripped clean of hundreds of years, of 100-year-old olive trees, 100-year-old living creatures of the earth, stripped clean, stripped bare, so that a 25-foot wall can be built. And I remember an elder standing there in horror, looking at this path of utter starkness, wondering what has happened to my land. Want for your brother and sister what you want for yourself. In coming home from that journey, words rang in my head. One nation under God, for liberty and justice for all. And I asked myself, does it ring true? It seemed a little bit hollow for the time. For in my heart, I knew that I had just witnessed a zone of occupation, a place where apartheid was being built right before our very eyes, right before the presence of the American people and of the world, a place where violence from both sides exists on a day-to-day basis. Where was the two-state solution? We heard about the two-state solution, but not the two-nation solution. Remember that when you hear that word, two-state solution, understand what it means. It doesn't mean one nation, Israel, and one nation, Palestine, side by side. It means a state within a state, maybe very similar to the state that our Native American brothers and sisters are in today in our country. Bantustans and cantons. This is what I remember seeing. This is what Jeff Halper has been speaking about for years, and it has come true. Almost every night, I pray in my heart for the people of Palestine and Israel to remember who they are, that they are children of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham, that they are brothers and sisters, cousins to one another. I ask my Jewish brothers and sisters, are you building a nation, or are you just building another golden calf in the eyes of God? I ask us to pray and to remember, all of us, to want for our brothers and sisters what we want for ourselves. I pray that we, as people of faith or people of non-faith, as citizens of America, that we have the courage to stand within ourselves for justice, to fight against the oppression that is happening, to speak out about apartheid. People don't like that word, but that's what is there, and its evils, and to pray for peace and unity. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength to speak the truth as people of faith. As Moses alayhi salam, Musa, spoke to Pharaoh in wanting to free the people of Israel. As Isa alayhi salam spoke, Jesus spoke to the Pharisees and to the Roman Empire about loving God and loving one another. As Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke to the Quraysh who were persecuting the people who were following God and the path of love of one another. I ask this of God, that He give us the strength of heart, that we bring peace into our hearts, that we bring peace into our communities. And I ask those leaders of faith to have the courage to speak to their communities about this issue, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, on the day of judgment will ask us, what did you say about Palestine and Israel? What did you do about Palestine and Israel? I say this as a reminder for you and for me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shukran tazilan. Thank you very much. We are going to move into the panel, so I will invite the panelists to come up. It'll probably take us a minute or two to set things up, so just bear with us. And thank you again to everybody who's been an integral part of this incredible weekend. So go ahead and come on up, panelists.
Now I have to be careful what I say. Sydney.
Is Sydney in the house? Sydney in the room? Okay.
Okay. He's coming. He's running down the aisle.
You always said he was fast.
Sorry.
So I think we're all here. So I'd like to introduce our closing panel on activism, Responding to the Crisis in Palestine, A Time for Advocacy and Activism. We've got Sydney, Ali, Mark, Josh, and Nadia here they're each going to take a few minutes to share, and then we're going to open it up mostly for questions, and we've got Kathy moderating for us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. This is going to be mostly an interactive panel with the audience and the panel at the panelists' request. I'm just going to say a couple of words. Shut me up if I go on too long. I'd like to start this off, this being on activism and advocacy, and basically on where we go from here after this beautiful conference, if I do say so myself, that I am discouraged. I'm very discouraged despite all of the, I know, good developments going on these days and everything I've heard here. I have a friend in the audience here a friend of his, he told me that when he told, this is a Jewish woman, he told her the title of the conference, Justice, the Path to Peace in Palestine, Israel, and she said, well, she really, I guess, sympathized with the Palestinians, but she was worried about the term justice because it implied that there had been injustice to the Palestinians. Well, duh, you know. But I think that's a I know that's a very, very common view. I told the administrator at my own church the other day that I was coming to a conference on the Palestinians, and you know, he was silent for a minute, and he said, those are the people who took over the Gaza Strip, isn't that right? And so that's what he knows about it. And I've been working on this issue for 40 years, and there are a huge number of developments they're very, very hopeful. But I really don't think we are any closer, I don't, to peace and a resolution of this conflict. In fact, we may be farther away than we were before. So what I'm hoping is that you guys can inspire me and everybody else with what we can do to resolve this. Nadia said this morning that it's going to take a long time to have an impact, and of course it's already been a long time, so I don't know how much more time the Palestinians had. Jeff Halper said last night, no one in Israel is paying any attention to the Palestinians anymore, which is obviously true. No one in the United States is paying attention to them anymore, and certainly no one in government, Congress, or anything. Don Wagner said we have to deconstruct the Bible, which is exactly right, but that's a huge task. Naeem said yesterday, before we can get justice, before Palestinians can get justice, there needs to be an acknowledgement of the injustice done to them. And Jeff Halper said last night, our job is to change policy. All of that seems to me just a huge, huge task. So I'm looking to you, and I hope the audience is looking to you guys to tell us how we do that. So.
Well, Kathy, with that challenge, I think we'll proceed. I have to say, as I said in my talk, that I'm very optimistic, very upbeat. I think we've made tremendous strides. The problem is, every time we start, something happens to get us truncated. The Oslo Peace Accords in '93 truncated about 2 decades of Palestinian organizing between and Palestinian Solidarity Movement, which had flowered since '82 to '93, and that was truncated. But I think we're much wiser now, and we have clear goals: freedom, justice, equality, and self-determination. And I don't think we're going to let ourselves be sidetracked again like we did after Oslo. And we are in an extremely different place today than we were in the year 2000. So I couldn't be more upbeat. It's tough, it's hard, we have to stay in it for the long haul. And I was, sorry, thanks. Sydney suggested that maybe each of us just focus on a couple of things that we might want to consider going back home. So I want to just focus on 2 things, actually, coming out of my talk. One is, I think it's really important to scale up our engaging in the discourse. Every single person in this room can write, has written, but I'm sure we can all do a lot more. I've had so many people tell me they've been on trips to Palestine and they've come back, and I don't know how many have actually been able to or thought about writing op-eds or letters to the editor, and we now have an incredible organization that can help us craft those op-eds, place them in our local media, and we just need to get out there and we need to take the discourse back. Every time we feel the discourse getting out of hand, we need to situate the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the quest for rights, the quest for justice, in what's going on, and get the word out, either through a letter to the editor, phone call to the media, or by writing an op-ed. And if you're from a local paper, or you can relate something to your state, it's very likely to be able to be placed. So that's one. Really ramp up our engagement in changing the discourse. Number two, I really want us all to try and listen to Palestinian voices. You've all heard me speak about the Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network, and I've shared the flyer with many of you, and I do encourage you, join the email list and spread the word about the Shabaka and other outlets out there that help get Palestinian voices out, like Electronic Intifada and so on. So just those two things.
Thank you, Nadia. Unlike Kathy, I haven't quite had 40 years of experience working for peace and justice, but I have been involved with this work for the last 10 to 15 years. Sorry, let me back up. I'm Josh Rubner, National Advocacy Director for the U.S. Campaign to End the Israeli Occupation. And unlike Kathy, I'm more optimistic than I've actually ever been doing this work. And here's why. There are so many smart, coherent, effective campaigns going on across the country to challenge U.S. policies, to engage in campaigns of boycott, divestment, and sanctions that are not only having an impact in changing the discourse, but are actually achieving substantial victories. And I know we've talked about some of them here this weekend, and I know Sydney is going to talk about some of them as well. But let me just give you 3 quick examples of what some of our member groups around the country are doing to achieve this. And I should back up a step and say that the U.S. campaign is a nationwide coalition, nearly 400 organizations, as Nadia mentioned this morning, including Friends of Sabeel, and I think all of the organizations here this weekend. So just 3 quick examples of some successes that we're seeing in terms of raising awareness, shifting discourse, having an impact on policies. Number 1, how many people are familiar with the campaign of Minnesota Break the Bonds? A few, okay. Are you covering that, Sydney? Okay, I'll cover that then. So, an activist group in Minnesota called Minnesota Break the Bonds discovered that their state was investing in Israel bonds. Israel bonds are, of course, sovereign instruments of the government of Israel, and when you purchase an Israel bond, that money goes directly into Israel's treasury to further entrench Israeli occupation and apartheid against the Palestinian people. So it's very much pertinent target for divestment efforts. And so the activists in Minnesota developed a very sophisticated and smart campaign to engage their elected representatives at the state level to try to lobby to end Minnesota's investment in State of Israel bonds. But as they were doing this, they found out that, lo and behold, according to the state law in Minnesota, Minnesota could only invest in U.S. government bonds and Canadian government bonds. Perfect. So they then went to the State Board of Investments and said, well, according to our own law, you can't be investing in Israel bonds anyway. And the State Board of Investments refused to back out of those investments, so they took their case to court. So they litigated not only on this issue of Minnesota technically not being able to invest in Israel bonds, but also on the substance of why investing in these Israel bonds is a bad thing, morally and politically. And so this case is winding its way through the court system in Minnesota. It's still up for adjudication. But it's raised a tremendous amount of awareness. It's put the organized pro-Israel community on the extreme defensive in the state, trying to counter this grassroots campaign. And it's led to a lot of really positive conversations in Minnesota. And hopefully, eventually, we'll have a good policy outcome as well. They found that, I believe that there are 31 or 32 other states that invest in Israel bonds. I don't know if New Mexico is one of them or not. But clearly, this is a divestment campaign that can be replicated across the country to get state governments to pull their money out of investing in Israel. Number two, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is a college town of about 50,000 people, it's where UNC is, University of North Carolina. And I guess this is particularly appropriate since we're in a Presbyterian church. It's Presbyterian, right? Yeah? Okay, I thought so. Okay. It's been a long last few days. But anyway, this Presbyterian church down in Chapel Hill decided that they were going to advertise on all of Chapel Hill's 98 free buses. Can you believe that they have free public transportation in Chapel Hill? I think that's pretty awesome. So anyway, this church, along with other allies in the community, took out these ads on these buses that say, be on our side. We are on the side of peace and justice and U.S. military aid to Israel. And it pictures a Palestinian and an Israeli making this request of us as U.S. citizens. This is the 9th city that has had this ad campaign appear either on buses or trains or billboards. And I know that you all in Albuquerque with the Stop $30 Billion Coalition have done an amazing job of kind of kicking off this phenomenon that we're seeing now across the country of grassroots activists really raising awareness of the issues and really putting, I think, Israel advocates really on the defensive and making them really uncomfortable. And I'm sure we'll talk later about, you know, tactics and stuff in terms of how people try to stifle debate, so I won't get into that now. But anyway, just to say that this particular reverend, who's been doing peace and justice work on many, many different issues for many, many different decades, he said that nothing that he's ever done before has raised as much community conversation as these bus ads. And really, the whole city is talking not only about the ads, but about this proposition of ending U.S. aid to Israel. Third, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, we're working with another member group of our coalition called Friends of Palestine, Wisconsin, on what I think is going to be a very path-breaking organizing campaign when it's launched after the election in November. They are going to be organizing to get their city council to pass a resolution to end U.S. aid to Israel and to redirect the money to unmet community needs by going into the community and building alliances with organizations that are working on domestic social justice issues that clearly don't have enough money to meet the unmet needs in the community for various issues like health and affordable housing and so forth. So this is, I think, a really exciting time, actually, where we're seeing a huge burst of not only activism, but success in getting the message out, success in putting our opponents on the defensive, and success in achieving some victories. Thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot one quick thing. I just wanted to plug very quickly that if you're in Albuquerque, I'll be speaking on the moral and financial costs of U.S. military aid to Israel Monday night, 6 p.m., University of New Mexico, Student Union Building, Ballroom A, free and open to the public, sponsored by Students for Justice in Palestine. Please do come if you can.
Okay, so this morning, actually, I didn't identify myself, although you've probably gotten the idea that I have something to do with the Kairos USA organization and movement. So I'm the program director. And what I want to do, first of all, is to urge everyone to just join. Would we be able to, Kathy, will we be able to have or are we free to use the mailing list for this conference to make sure that everyone gets the next Kairos newsletter?
I think certainly. Don Wagner, can we do that?
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
And,
but everybody should leave here with a copy of the document, the Palestinian document and the U.S. document. I would not say I'm optimistic, but I would say that I'm very hopeful. I mean, I think you'd have to be crazy to be optimistic. Well, actually, two of my colleagues, I just called you crazy. Yeah, I'm sorry, I won't call you crazy.
No.
But I am, I feel like we are going in a direction and there's no way to stop, and I feel the momentum building. I think it's impossible to predict when, how, and what form the solution will take. But all I can say is that everywhere I go, and mostly they're in settings like this, what I experience is a hunger, which is the only word I can use to describe it, a hunger for information and for ways to get involved. And it's Christians sitting in churches, because that's what I do. And I'm convinced that there is enormous, enormous untapped potential, and that this is where people want to go. Now, FASNA now has, new leadership. We just had a wonderful leadership conference in Portland last month, and I think number one or number two on the list was, let's get together and do the theology. I think number two must have been campaigns or BDS or something like that. People are very interested in working on this as people of faith, as directed and motivated by their faith. And we, I think, here at FASNA are the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I think if I would tell people to do one thing, it would be to go back to your churches, go back to your organizations, get them involved, duplicate yourselves, make sure your pastors or your priests are on board. Get the Kairos USA document and the Kairos Palestine document into your churches, use the study guides, and get people educated. The other really important issue is that I think for the first time, and this is I think one of the main missions of Kairos USA, is not to replace or duplicate the things that are going on at the grassroots and inside the denominations. But it's to allow there to be a place where people can step out of their denominational silos, and to transcend the mainline evangelical divide and the black-white divide that characterizes the American church. Talk about potential. I mean, there are evangelicals who have been working on this for decades, and they want to know about the rest of you, and you need to know what they're up to. Go to the Christ at the Checkpoint Conference website, where 600, this is the second one that happened, 600 American evangelicals, I mean, the real deal, got together in Bethlehem, listened nonstop to talks by evangelical pastors from the United States and by Palestinian Christians about what's going on. And then they went on field trips and they saw what was happening. That's a huge force in America, a huge force, and it's growing. Every time the Presbyterian Church scores another couple hundred people that have left, you know where they're going. So I think we can't underestimate this, and this is the power of Kairos USA. We're also making a really, really big push for the black churches. And I think I spoke about that briefly this morning. So I think that just like the church was the heart and soul of the civil rights movement, and just like the churches globally were the tipping point for South Africa, that is one of the best hopes. This can change the politics. This, to use Jim Wallace's phrase, will change the political wind and will provide our government, maybe, with the political cover and the constituency it needs to do something a little bit different with respect to Israel, and to allow for the political realignment that has to happen eventually to be something that's going to bring about a just peace and a future for both the Israelis and the Palestinians. I just can't emphasize it enough that the future has to be with what Fazla started so many years ago, and that it needs to be a part of this broader movement.
I'd like to interrupt Ali before he starts just for a minute. These billboards, I think did the other one go up over there? The billboard campaign that Josh mentioned in Chapel Hill, the ads and so on, actually started here in Albuquerque with the billboard that is pictured on that one. It went up, an Israeli tank and a little Palestinian girl. This is all sponsored by a coalition that still is in existence called the Coalition to Stop 30 Billion to Israel, which refers to the 10-year U.S. commitment that goes until 2017, I believe, to give Israel at least $3 billion a year, $30 billion over 10 years. And we, this organization, put up this billboard, and almost immediately the billboard company rescinded our contract and actually ripped the billboard off. That's why it says "Stopped by the Israel Lobby." And then this one went up, and there have been successive billboards that have remained up. But that started the campaign thanks to Josh and his support in large measure around the country. So anyway, thank you, Ali. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I want to say that I am not only hopeful, I am optimistic. And I can understand why Kathy feels that, you know, the mountain is so high to climb, and it is. And none of us, you know, can belittle the obstacles and challenges ahead. But if you look at where we've come from in the past few years, it's incredibly hopeful. And I think we can forget that what was unsayable or unthinkable just 2 years or 4 years ago is now commonplace. And to think ahead to what will the discussion look like in 2 years or 4 years' time. And we are in a hurry. This situation, this injustice has gone on too long. These billboards are a perfect example. I happened to be in Albuquerque just about 2 years ago when this billboard first went up, and Armin Chakirian, who I don't know if he's still here today, took me, I remember, you know, took me on a drive, and we saw the billboard. Now, 2 years later, this has happened in how many cities?
How many cities, Josh?
In
quite a few.
About 15 cities. And that started here in Albuquerque. And you win both ways, because if you put the billboard up, lots of people see it and you get your message out. If the bullying and the pressure from the Israel lobby gets your billboard taken down, well, you have a story and you have another opportunity to get your message out. Yeah. So that's something that started here in Albuquerque. So you can be very proud of that here. And I think when we look back at all the struggles that have, in our own lifetimes, for civil rights, against apartheid, struggles for social justice in this country that are still going on. Until the moment of victory, it always seems like the path ahead is endless. Nobody I've talked to who is involved in the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa expected to win. They didn't expect to win, but they had to struggle because there was no other option for them to live and to survive. The struggle itself made life meaningful. Our intention is to win justice, not just struggle for the sake of it. Our intention is to get there. And what we learn from all of these victories in history is that, I'm going to quote the Bible again.
My God.
The day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. You don't know when the moment of victory will be. You don't know when that tipping point will be. It could be in a year. It could be in 5 years. could be in 10 years. But it's within our grasp. And what we have now that we didn't have 10 years ago is really a global movement, a Palestinian-led boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And I want to disagree with Jeff Halper, who was saying last night, and I think Jeff has incredible insight and wisdom. And we can disagree on some things, but I'll disagree with him that there is no plan or there is no vision. There is. The BDS call, the civil society call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, lays out 3 clear goals for what justice looks like. And there'll be some fine print to fill in along the way. But that can't distract us from the struggle that is already being waged all over this country and growing. And I can only echo the words of everyone who's come before me, and I know I'm going to echo in advance everything that Sydney says, that the important thing is for us to go back and to get involved, to be mobilized. I met a young woman yesterday of 90 years old, is she with us, who is going out every Saturday in Albuquerque as part of the Stop the 30 Billion picket. So you're never too young, you're never too old to be involved, and I think that's a standard that really all of us should strive to meet, to be involved every day in the best way that we can. Thank you.
So I'm Sidney Levy from Jewish Voice for Peace, and I have been accused of speaking too fast. And I'm not going to disappoint, but what I am going to say slowly, and this is probably something that if you want, you should write down, is my email address, because in case you don't get what I'm saying, or if you have questions, you're welcome to email me. And my email is Sidney, SYDNEY, @jvp.org. Okay, so am I encouraged or not? I'm neither. It really depends on you. It really depends on what happens after the conference. If you finish this conference, go home, and think that this was a great opportunity to learn new things and then continue with your life, then I will be extremely discouraged. But if you actually decide to take action, then I will be encouraged. Now, what do I mean by taking action? Not just any kind of action. When I was growing up, I used to hear the expression, talking truth to power, as if you were to tell power what the truth is about the occupation, about apartheid, about all of these things, people would realize that they were like, oh, I get it, that makes sense, and the occupation vanishes, and all of this system of discrimination vanishes. That is not the case. You do not talk truth to power. You talk power to power. That means that we need to build our power, we need to build our muscle in the movement. And the way to do it is very simple. It takes time, but it's simple, and there are no shortcuts. If there were shortcuts, we would have done them a long time ago. In my opinion, you do them with having campaigns. And campaigns are not just any kind of events. You have goals, you have targets, you have a methodology to your campaign, and from the beginning, you have some idea on whether your campaign is winnable or not. And if you do not think that it's a winnable campaign, then it's a wrong campaign for you. Then you have to figure something else. So you have campaigns, number one, and you work in networks. Convincing one person at a time is cute and it's important, but it's not enough. Networks, that's where we are going towards. That's what the opposition is doing. The opposition is looking at 3 C's. They call them the 3 C's: churches, campuses, and communities. Those are the same 3 C's where we are and where we should be going. We are not convincing one individual at a time. We are convincing one network at a time, one church at a time, one campus at a time. Obviously, you do that one person by person, but you're thinking more than just the individual. Lastly, and before going into the specific campaigns, you do it taking into account, particularly since we are in Sabeel, and Sabeel is an ecumenical organization, taking into account that this is not only about Christians, it's not even only about Christians and Jews. If you ignore the Muslim side of the equation, then you're done. You're not having a good movement. On the other hand, On the other hand, if you fail to put the Palestinian voice as the moral center of your argument, and not just speak for the Palestinians, but have the Palestinians speak for themselves in your campaign, then you don't do. So it's very easy to do, you just need to do it. Now, I'm going to speak briefly about 2 or 3 campaigns, and then I'm going to stop so that we can get your comments. Particularly for those that are working on faith-based activism, by early next year, there's going to be a really amazing boycott of settlement goods campaign that's going to be interdenominational. Many churches are going to be involved in this. There are already campaigns against Ahava, against SodaStream, against Hadiklayim dates, but you're going to see very strong cooperation among different denominations working on this. I hope that you will pay attention and that you will join. If you haven't joined Kairos or FOSNA, obviously, if you're doing interfaith work, you need to be involved. For those of you specifically that are inside of Presbyterian or Methodist settings, it's very important that you do not wait until the next General Assembly or the next General Conference to think about divestment. The work about divestment, which happens church by church, starts tomorrow. The work that the Presbyterians, we are in a Presbyterian church here, the work towards Detroit in 2014 already started. So if you're Presbyterian, we need your help. If you're Methodist, we need your help. If you are neither of these, there is work that is happening inside of your church. There are upcoming networks of activists, and you need to be involved, and you need to ask either FOSNA or Kairos, and they can connect you with the current networks of activists. We are working inside of networks. We are not working alone. If you do not want to work on a faith-based setting, I recommend that you look at communities. If you happen to live in a community that is closed to a university, a hospital, or a school, and if you do not live close to any one of those, let me know. I think that all of you do. You are probably welcome to join the TIAA-CREF campaign, which is a campaign that's asking the largest retirement fund in the United States to divest from companies that profit from the Israeli occupation. You can get more information at wedivest.org. There's a lot of work that is happening in this area. If you are talking, we were talking before about the bus ads. There are these wonderful ads that we saw in here. The U.S. campaign is working on the Be on Our Side ads. There are other ads that you should consider. If you are lucky enough that Pamela Geller comes to your community with her hateful ads, and she has ads now in San Francisco, in New York, and in DC, this is an excellent opportunity to counter ad and to build a coalition of people that stand for free speech and against hatred. And this is now happening in the Bay Area. There's a coalition in New York, there's a forming coalition in DC, and this is really important work. It's work of solidarity with our Muslim brothers and sisters that are being attacked. Finally, if you are working inside of a Jewish setting, or if you have Jewish friends that are finding their way out into this issue, Jewish Voice for Peace by now has 35 chapters across the country. We welcome more chapters. We will provide you with support, whether you're Jewish or not. We will provide you with a Jewish voice that is against the occupation, that is against what's happening in Israel and in Palestine. So if you have people that are interested in organizing, let us know. Again, just to repeat very briefly, think of campaigns, think of networks, and this is your homework. If you do it, if you do even a small piece of it, then I will be encouraged. If you don't, then you will discourage me, and I will be very, very sad.
Thank you so much for your words of encouragement and insight. I will go ahead and invite audience members to do the line again at the microphone if you'd like to come up and ask questions or brief comments for our panelists. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the words of encouragement by showing that there are some good things going on. I want to be optimistic, but I want to just share with you, between 1999 and 2012, there were 13 years between the times I visited Palestine and Israel. What I saw when I returned in 2012, rapid fragmentation of the West Bank, a cancer-like expansion of Israeli settlements beyond anything I could believe that could take place in that period of time, massive theft of Bedouin land and water, a comprehensive, systematic approach to oppression that was unbelievable to me. And it appears that the Palestinian Authority has become a puppet of oppression, and the Israelis are using them as one of their tools. So my question is, what can any of us do to encourage and support new Palestinian leadership that is essential for the change that has to happen in order for us all to be successful?
Just in keeping with the buses, I just got an email from a friend saying tomorrow in Portland, the buses will have the 4 maps of increasingly less green on them. So that's another event in Portland, Oregon, starting tomorrow. Another point, I'm an investment manager, investment management consultant, and I got an email about a month ago from one of our investment money managers saying they had this Israel fund, invest in these companies of Israel. And I wrote back to them and said, we boycott apartheid Israel. And then they sent it back again, and I said the same thing. And then the third time I said, and I'm going to tell all my associates the same thing. Third, I had a client the other day, we were constructing an investment portfolio and we were having discussion, and he decided not to invest in Hewlett-Packard, Motorola, and Caterpillar.
I had the great privilege of being one of the day laborers in the ICAD summer camp this summer. It's a fabulous experience. And it was my first trip to Palestine and Israel. I thought I was pretty well educated on the subject before I got there, but I learned that there is nothing like the gut experience of being there and talking to the people who are living through it, working with the people who are living through it. And I decided that my next serious investment in the issue is going to be to try to confront AIPAC in a way that I don't think they're often confronted. Instead of putting that money into an adventure for myself, I'm going to try find some friends who will join me in contributing a similar amount of money and challenging our congressional representative to go on an ICAD educational tour. Because I really think nothing is more likely to change the complexion of our Congress with respect to Palestine than getting them to go to the West Bank, not under the aegis of AIPAC and its friends, where they might get to Ramallah for a fancy dinner with the PA, but get them to go meet Palestinians where they're living and how they're living.
Hi, guys. I have a question, and I adore all of you up there, and I adore all of you also, and I just wanted to sort of point something out that I just noticed, which is that throughout this 2-day conference, with the plenary and the keynote speakers, we have had 14 people speak. 2 of them were women. None of them, I believe, Josh, I apologize because I don't know how old you are, but I don't think anybody was under the age of 30. And yet the campaigns, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, Ali, I apologize. Ali's 19, just.
Becca, neither are you.
That is very true. I am a woman, however.
You are a woman.
I think. And what I wanted to sort of ask is that the campaigns that many of you guys have been talking about have been led by young, many women, many Muslims, which is also underrepresented. And I just wanted to ask you to comment on that, but specifically, how can we use these forums and other forums like it to change that dynamic?
I'm Leah Rosen. This is my first gathering of this kind. I have worked until this time with J Street. However, I moved here to be part of Lynn Gottlieb's congregation in 1984, and I admire her very much. I was glad she was here and that I've watched her work. I'm also very influenced by Creativity for Peace, And I'm talking to everyone really now. I need help to build here a dialogue group between Jewish and Arab women. I feel it's a very important point, and I also feel that the work of J Street, albeit it is not parallel, is so important to get into the center of the Jewish community and say, this is wrong, and we need a Palestinian state. Say what you will. I know that we're possibly and probably in different place, but I feel to be in the heart of the Jewish community and to push this issue is a place of necessary alliance with this movement that I see. I also want to speak as a lesbian in terms of the struggle. Look at Stonewall. It was 64, maybe 68, I can't remember the year, that happened. So now it's 50 years later, and the struggle has progressed to where the issue becomes, it's not over, but already we're in the place in this much time of it's becoming normal, I feel. Okay, so I just take hope in that struggle and where it was with people being beaten to now where people are being married, and may that come to pass in this situation as well. I would like to, whoever would like, I've put cards and the people and the work that inspires me in here. I'd like to work with you. I sit in the center of the Jewish community. Please talk to me.
I just want to let the people in the audience to know that these two young women are people who hold up signs every Saturday at Manal, and totally wrong address, Tulane and Central. And I'm 72, but we don't mind if people are younger than that. Anybody's invited to join us, because Armand has very nice signs for us to protest the issue.
I'd just like to bring something that perhaps most people here may not have known, and it's about an optimism that I'd like to support. Everybody here probably knows Rush Limbaugh. Maybe you don't actually listen to him, but everyone knows that over the past decades, what a corrosive force he's been in the American psyche. Well, since the comments that he gave about Sandra Fluke, he has been under boycott, and the situation is that he is under a serious attack. There's a whole right-wing network with Premier Radio, and he's going down. He won't be totally off the air, but stations are dropping him, and it's a big change, and it's going to undermine the whole hate talk radio. So that's something that probably isn't up on the radar yet, but that's an optimistic sign that things are changing. Thanks.
I don't know how to handle the encouraging Palestinian leadership. David Nunabel talked about getting investment counselors, and as he did, to advise divestment. Ken Mayers, whose congressional representative is also mine and that of several people in the audience, has a challenge grant. Maybe you should take these one at a time. I'd like to answer Becca and give her credit for her statement too. Then Leah, and honoring the elderly ladies who demonstrate every week. How about one of you like to take on encouraging a new Palestinian leadership?
Do you want everybody to answer one question, or just to answer the couple that they feel related to?
I think the second option, that we should go and people should answer
good. Okay.
what they need to answer.
So I just I just wanted to touch on two of the questions. One is the encouraging and supporting new Palestinian leadership. You know, in Arabic we have a saying, "Min tummak labab as-sama," from your mouth to the heavens, you know, may somebody grant your wish. I mean, I wish that we had a different Palestinian leadership. We desperately need an effective Palestinian leadership. This leadership is sucking up the air out of the room, it's representing us, and yet not representing us. We cannot, it's not our job to look for a Palestinian leadership as Americans who are active in the United States. It's up to the Palestinians to do that. And that's why I said, and then it will take time because there's a lot of forces, as you said exactly, it seems to be a puppet leadership, you know, effectively working to help manage Israel's occupation. There are many forces amongst the Palestinians that are challenging this leadership in different ways. They're not mature yet, but one of them is mature, which is, well, or is maturing fast, which is the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions National Committee, the BNC, which, as I said, as a Palestinian, I feel really gives me hope in the potential of changing, or at least having a goals, very clear goals, as well as a strategy, until Palestinians can get to a place where they can change their leadership. I also want to use this opportunity to comment on something that Jeff Halper said in his talk yesterday, most of which I found, you know, I agreed with and found extremely helpful, which is about the one state, the conclusion that it's a one-state paradigm. And I think, so I just want to make a distinction between what we do in terms of our thinking and our discourse, changing activities, and what we do in terms of our organizing. And again, as Americans here, you know, it's not our job to get into a discourse, it's not our job to do our organizing around pushing for a solution. It's up to the people there to come up with a solution. You know, by all means, let's share in the strategizing and the thinking and so on. But when we do our organizing, I wholeheartedly support all of those who are agnostic on one state or two state, because we've managed to shift the discourse towards the fact that Palestinians have human rights. And that's what we need to be behind as organizers. The other, I've never engaged in dialogue projects as such, but I've engaged in trying to collaborate with progressive Zionists on Palestinian human rights, and I realized after a couple of years that one can only go so far. You know, when it comes to a question of human rights versus Israel's security trumps every time. And so that was not a place where I personally wanted to put my energies. I think a lot of the work I do is with American Jews. They're American Jews who have made their way to adopting a rights perspective and to standing in solidarity. And so that's where I put my energies. That said, if anybody, you know, invites me to speak at a synagogue or, you know, a talk, you know, to largely Jewish audiences, I always go. You know, you go, you present the position, you present the facts. But in terms of organizing and activism, my energies are with those who have found their way so that one doesn't waste a lot of time, you know, talking the issue over and over again. So that's just what I wanted to touch on. Thanks.
I'll touch on the issue of congressional travel. About 10 years or so ago, I co-led the first ever Muslim-Jewish congressional delegation to Palestine, Israel, and we were denied entry with diplomatic passports in the hands of most of the congressional staffers who came with us, and it made international headlines. So I will say that taking congressional staffers through the refugee camps of the West Bank, this was at the height of the intifada where you could literally, well, I'm sure you can still do this today in many places, walk through the holes punched, the holes of the homes of Palestinians punched through by Israeli artillery and tanks and so forth. So that was, I think, quite a searing experience as well for those congressional staffers. And there definitely is some benefit to taking the actual members of Congress there. I will say that in the post-Abramoff scandal period, the laws have been changed quite significantly. So please do consult with a lawyer so you don't get yourself or your member of Congress into trouble for taking them on a sponsored trip. But they definitely do have a value, and I'm going to come back to J Street in just a minute because I feel compelled to address that comment. But I will say on behalf of J Street, not on behalf of J Street, but in support of at least one thing that they did, they've taken congressional delegations to Palestine, Israel, and they've had quite an effect on the members of Congress. Representative Jackie Speier from California remarked to a newspaper that this looks like apartheid.
Oh, my God.
Now, that certainly wasn't J Street's intent to pitch apartheid analogy to these members of Congress, but yes, that does go to show that some members of Congress who are somewhat logical and somewhat open, you know, will be able to see for themselves what's going on. And there certainly does need to be a counter to these insipid AIPAC congressional delegations. I'll just say, are we being filmed, by the way, right now? Yes, we're being filmed. An anonymous congressional office. You know, so, oh, well, these AIPAC delegations have such great value because when we're done with the official propaganda for the day, then we sneak out of our hotel and we go check out what life is like in East Jerusalem. I'm like, if that's really what you have to do to get information and see things on this trip, then no, it's not worth it to do such a thing, even if you think you're progressive and you think you're changing the dynamics of the policy. I won't speak to, you know, decisions made about who speaks here at this particular conference, but I think the points that Becca raises about diversity are very important, and it's ones that we certainly always keep in mind at the U.S. campaign to end the Israeli occupation when we do public events and conferences and so forth, because, you know, the reality is that it's not just white Jewish men doing this work. Far from it. It's an incredibly diverse movement, and we always need to reflect that diversity in our work, in our public beings. And I'll just say one more word about J Street. There was a time when I didn't feel that it was my job to criticize J Street, because I do see that there is a particular value for what they're doing within the organized Jewish community. But those days of not criticizing them have long since passed. And the reason why, well, there are a lot of reasons why, but let me just name a couple. J Street supports ever greater amounts of US taxpayer-funded weapons going to Israel. That's something that cannot be tolerated within any movement that's seeking to advance the cause of Palestinian human rights. Now, if J Street had taken a silent position on BDS or an agnostic position on BDS, perhaps then I could let that slide too. But not only has J Street not done those things, but J Street has actively come out and campaigned to try to defeat boycott, divestment, and sanctions efforts, trying to defeat the efforts of the Methodist and Presbyterian churches. So if we see J Street as an ally in this struggle, it's a wrong analysis of who is an ally and who is not, because J Street is working 180 degrees That's half, right? 180 degrees against the agenda that we are trying to advance and the campaigns that we are trying to forward. So I appreciate the role that they play within the Jewish American community, but I don't see them as alliance building partners in this struggle.
Amen. And I'll have some more to say about that in a minute. I want to just address just three quick things. With respect to the issue of Muslims, I didn't have a chance to talk about that this morning. The Kairos USA document directly addresses Islamophobia. It makes the basic point that the mainstream American sort of idea, cultural idea, deeply ingrained cultural idea about Islam, which of course it conflates with the Arab world, is a major issue that Christians need to take on, both theologically and sort of culturally as Americans. And that Islamophobia is something that must be confronted and must be part of our discourse. And if you want to know about a group of Christians who are talking about Islam and communicating with Muslims, look to the evangelicals, who are really on this, because they are out there in the world learning, by the way, that evangelizing is not about bringing souls to heaven to be with them, but about doing God's work. I mean, the evangelicals that I meet, and there's a broad evangelical middle that is getting broader and broader to the left, and they're trying to figure out what to do about this, because they had been taught that they had to bring these people to God, and that they didn't worship God. They get that that could not possibly be true, and they're working on it. So there's a lot of dynamism going on in the evangelical community, in the center, not only Jim Wallace, who are working hard on this, which is another good reason why mainline Christians need to be talking with evangelicals about this issue. So that's one thing on that. With respect to the Palestinian leadership, of course I cannot speak to the issue of Palestinian leadership. But I can speak to the fact that if there is to be an opportunity, if we are to create the possibility for that leadership to emerge, for the room to be made for that leadership to emerge to Naja's point, then it's about the international community. All of the work that was done in South Africa to bring about new leadership and to make room for that happened because of international pressure. And so in some ways, we have nothing to say about who's going to be leaders of the Palestinians, but we have everything to do with whether that leadership has the opportunity to emerge and what that leadership can do. Okay. Finally, with respect, when I first heard about J Street, and it must have been, I don't know, 4 years ago when J Street came along, my first reaction, I shared it with people and I knew that they would think I was nuts, was, sounds like an AIPAC front to me. And in fact, if I were AIPAC, what I would do is I would create J Street. And if AIPAC were smart, that's exactly what they would have done, and they would have supported that, because again, our main adversary, I mean, AIPAC is a formidable adversary, but it's the quote progressives, the quote moderates, which, and the line blurs for me, that says, give us time, let us work on this, let's support the president in his quest for a two-state solution, two states living side by side in peace and security. Well, we know what that means, and it's J Street. And we know what that face looks like now. And we know that it's not acceptable. And that goes for the Jewish progressives that are lionized, like Peter Beinart and any of the, quote, Jewish progressives or progressive Zionists. Okay? You cannot have a kindler, gentler Zionism. You cannot have a progressive apartheid. I think that with respect to our relationship to the Jewish community, don't be fooled by this panel. What do we have up here? We have 2 Palestinians and 3 Jews, right? Don't be fooled by that. This is not a Jewish effort. And we are here to help, but this is a struggle, to my mind, that needs to be taken on full bore by the American church. And if you make your movement forward contingent on bringing the Jewish community along with you, then you will wait too long. The Jewish community, the Jewish people, if we are such a thing, is in deep trouble. And we all know how deep that trouble is. And the the Jewish establishment that claims to speak for us and represent us is not going to give you any quarter here. First, the gloves will be on, and it will give us time. Work with us, and be our friends as you always have been. And then if you say no to that, then the gloves come off, and you see what happens. You're attacked, and you're attacked really full bore. The Jews who are here are not here to bless your effort or to give you permission to go ahead. We're here to help. But I don't see this as an interfaith enterprise. I think strategically the church needs, and people may disagree with me, I think the church needs to take this on as the church. And the unfortunate thing is that the way we would all like it to be would be that this would be interfaith and that we could all work on this together. But as soon as you open that door, maybe someday that won't be true, as soon as you open that door, you are potentially hobbling yourself. BDS is the best thing we have. There is no way that it is going to be acceptable or that that's going to be blessed or allowed in any way, shape, or form. And so our job, really, is to make sure that Christians get educated about their own values and about their own theology to clear away any barriers or hesitation to doing what needs to be done. And as I said to the people at the workshop, again, speaking in Christian terms, it's a cross to pick up. There's no comfortable way to do that with respect to what you have learned and what you have been trained about and what you would like to do with respect to the relationship with the Jewish community. It's a cross to pick up. It is damned uncomfortable. And it's not your fault. The Jewish community and the Zionist enterprise has set it up that way. And I don't see that changing very soon.
I just want to say, on the issue of Palestinian leadership, it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. When Mahmoud Abbas comes to the United States, as he does at least once a year for the UN, he never meets with any Palestinian community members. And I put this challenge out the other day on social media. Could anyone think of an example of any community event in any Palestinian community in North America where Mahmoud Abbas had been received or invited even? And nobody could come up with one. He always goes and meets with leaders of the Israel lobby every single year because that is his constituency. He needs their support for Congress to keep funding the Palestinian Authority. Even though he decried at the UN the actions of the Israeli army, the US-funded Palestinian security forces under his control work with the Israeli army every single day. So I think, you here, us here in the United States cannot choose a new Palestinian leadership. I agree completely with Mark's formulation that BDS and the struggle we wage here can open the space for it. So I think we can only go by the principle of first do no harm, do nothing to assist a so-called leadership that is patently working against the interests of Palestinians. Don't have to go out necessarily and oppose it loudly, but don't assist it. First do no harm. And by engaging in the work that we can do here in BDS, we can open space for new possibilities for Palestinians themselves to come up with new leadership. The second point I want to address, I completely endorse what Josh said about J Street. And as a Palestinian, the way I look at things, I don't judge people by, do they support one state or two, because people disagree about those things, even though I have my positions on that. But I do ask, do they support my rights and the rights of all Palestinians as set out in the 2005 BDS call? And clearly J Street does not. It opposes my rights. It opposes them, not just doesn't support them. So for me, that's a very clear line. The issue of dialogue was brought up, and again, I think this is very important because, one of the people who spoke mentioned dialogue between Palestinian and Jewish women. And the notion of dialogue is very seductive because all of us would like everything, every trouble in the world to be resolvable by sitting around and listening to each other and coming to a just outcome. But what we know is that the context and conditions in which dialogue occurs is very, very important. So during the struggle against apartheid, nobody called for dialogue with supporters of apartheid in South Africa. Although there were white people, of course, in South Africa involved in the struggle against apartheid. So again, I would refer people to the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel's guidelines on applying the boycott. And what they say, I just want to read a few sentences from it. Cultural events and projects involving Palestinians and/or Arabs and Israelis that promote balance between the two sides, and balance and two sides are in quotes, in presenting their respective narratives as if on a par, or are otherwise based on the false premise that the colonizers and the colonized, the oppressors and the oppressed, are equally responsible for the so-called conflict, are intentionally deceptive, intellectually dishonest, and morally reprehensible. Such events and projects often seeking to encourage dialogue or reconciliation between the two sides, again in quotes, without addressing the requirements of justice, promote the normalization of oppression and injustice. And then it sets out, I won't read any further, that the basis for dialogue or cooperation or joint work or including people in our struggle is adherence to the just principles in the BDS call. Now, I am not suggesting for a minute that the person who spoke went into this deceptively or seeking, anything other than a sincere effort. And the reason I raise this is because I think people often do go into dialogue sincerely, thinking that this is an unambiguously good thing to do. The other thing is that I think it's these guidelines talk about Palestinians, Arabs, and Israelis. What was mentioned here was Palestinian women and Jewish women. And I think this is also important, not to institutionalize the notion that this is a conflict between Palestinians and Jews, or that Palestinians and Jews are at poles who need to be brought together in dialogue, because that actually sets up a conflict. Zionism is what tells us that Jews are the enemies of the Palestinians. I'm not a Zionist. I oppose Zionism. Therefore, I reject the notion that Jews are my opponents or enemies. The final thing I want to say is simply to acknowledge Becca Wolf's comment about the importance of what we've learned at this conference is that you're never too old, never too young to take part in this movement, and that's incredibly important. But also to acknowledge the role of young people, and there have been some of the young activists here in Albuquerque, like Dania Mustafa, who's there, and I know there are others whose names perhaps I don't know, who have been extremely involved in organizing this conference and working on campus. And I know that right now, across this country, and I mentioned that in my talk last night, our young people are under attack for the work they're doing on campuses. So it's incredibly important that one of the things that those of us who are better established, who are older, who are more independent, can do is to think of ways to support our students when they're under attack so that they're not isolated and that there is a community off campus that is supporting them. I think that is an extremely important role that many of us can play as well.
Let's see, a number of comments. Regarding the investment advisor, I would like to speak with you afterwards. Regarding dialogue, okay, so my name is Sidney. I was a settler for 7 years in Jerusalem, and I didn't even know that I was a settler. I held every position that you can believe that was wrong. I believed all of them. And it was a process, and it was a long process of coming out of the closet and figuring things out and getting where I am today. And it's an ongoing process of decolonizing yourself, and that's fine. I believe that there is a place for dialogue, and I believe that there's a place for these things. But the same way that when people talk about tourism, for example, tourism in the Holy Land, there are guidelines for ethical tourism, so there are guidelines for dialogue as well. Part of what you were talking about is not necessarily not that dialogue is impossible, but dialogue that pretends that both sides are equal, as you're saying, that's not a dialogue that's going to get you very far. So I think that if you are in a position that that's where you are at this moment, that's where you need to be at this moment, then you need to do some work inside of your own community first, or with other people, not necessarily with the Palestinians, with the Arabs, the Muslims, however you define the other. You need to do some work to get a little bit further away and a little further in progress, and then engage in dialogue. But I do believe that there is a place for that if it's done ethically, because we are all hopefully moving forward. On the issue of the Jewish community that, Mark, you were mentioning, I agree. I just want to complexify the issue a little bit. There is not a Jewish community. There are Jewish communities here in the United States. Jewish Voice for Peace has multiple Jewish communities in different cities across the country. There are other formations as well. Most of the Jews in America are unaffiliated. They don't belong to any Jewish community. What I want to affirm from what you were saying is that you are not waiting for the approval of the Jews to move forward. The best that we can do is provide some support and provide a voice of support. But please do not wait for our approval. Use us as your partners, as your allies in this struggle, and that's the best that we can do for you. Regarding the issue of J Street, I do believe that there's a role for them as well, but I want to be very clear, and this is not only about J Street, it's also about American for Peace Now. When we were talking about Presbyterian divestment, you heard in one of the plenaries or workshops or whatever, there were 666 votes. Divestment lost by 2 votes, okay? J Street and Americans for Peace Now did not stand aside. They came out publicly in the press against divestment, saying that divestment was not a positive step, that was destructive towards the state of Israel. And when they did that, I lay the failure of those 2 votes in them, because it's not as if we lost by a large margin. You do not need to convince a lot of people. Now, when I was giving my workshop earlier yesterday, I was talking about the strategy of the Reut Institute. That's a think tank in Israel that thinks about how to defend Israel from all of the attacks that come from anti-occupation activists, etc. And one of the things that they say is that when there is a BDS campaign, for example, they will look at the most left-wing, liberal Jewish organization that is against the occupation and opposes BDS. That's the organization that they will put in the forefront. They will not put in the forefront the Zionist Organization of America. They will not put in the forefront AIPAC. J Street will be in the forefront. I am not suggesting at this moment that J Street is in coordination with the Reut Institute, but what I am suggesting is that it follows the same strategy. And by saying this, I am not saying that if you are a supporter of J Street that you should stop supporting them, because they do good work as well. What I'm saying, if you are a supporter of J Street, or if you're a supporter of Americans for Peace Now, you have leverage that some of us don't have. You have leverage because you're a supporter. So your job is to tell them when they are doing a good job, and your job is to tell them when they are not, to hold them accountable. That is your job if you support them. Finally, on the issue of gender and youth, I actually think that the most important thing, first of all, is raising the question that was raised so that it's on the table. The first step to closing the gap is to naming the issue. That's number one. I think particularly the issue of youth, we have to recognize that young people organize differently, and we have to respect those modes of organization, and we have to understand that we're not here only to support them, but we're also here to learn from them. And one of the things that we can learn is not only how things are happening on campus, but it would be very good if for the next Sabeel conference or any other kind of conference, we actually learned the modes of anti-racism training, for example, that Students for Justice on Palestine do. Or actually the Students for Justice on Palestine conference that is upcoming, they're going to have a heavy emphasis on gender. So it would be very good for us to learn, not because we are racist or anything else. We all have, all of us, this is anti-racism training 101, a little bit of racism and a little bit of sexism in us. And some of us have more than others. But we have to learn, and we have to learn about that, and we have to learn how to handle it. And so having some training is always good. I also would recommend, and these are practical steps, because the only way to close those gaps is with practical solutions, not with wishful thinking. I would recommend, considering whether for the next conference there could be a youth caucus, right? Where the youth can meet together in a space and they can tell us what they need and what they want. Believe me, youth will come if they feel welcome. And I would recommend, actually, if at all possible, to have a Palestinian caucus as well. Thank you.
We have 5 minutes. Mark is going to take one. I'm going to take one, and then we'll have a little time to overflow. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say one more thing that hasn't come up very much today. Yesterday, I think a few people mentioned it, this whole business of positive investment. This is one way that BDS, in a soft way, is going to be opposed, and the Methodists and the Presbyterians saw that big time. And I can only repeat what Alex Awad of the Bethlehem Bible College said in front of the Methodists in Tampa, which was, you must defeat positive investment. We want you to help us get our freedom, not help build our prison. So positive investment is very, very much a tool in the hands, a powerful tool in the hands of those who oppose BDS. Don't buy it for a minute. The other thing I wanted to say was that Sydney mentioned the Rayut Institute and the Israel Action Network. These are heavily financed, massively financed, well-organized campaigns that are trying to put a stop to everything that we are doing. They're addressing liberal Jewish groups, but their main target is what they call liberal Christians. That would be you guys. And so just be ready for them. The other thing was that I think I said, I didn't say Jewish community. I think I said the Jewish establishment. Language is funny. There are many, many Jewish communities. Some of them are here. There is JVP has a rabbinical council, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it is a Jewish community. It's part of the Jewish community. It's particularly wonderful for the people who are on that rabbinical council, I think. And they're a powerful voice. And take a look at the Kairos USA website. We have a letter from the JVP Rabbinical Council, a letter of support. And it's a wonderful thing. The Jewish establishment, and again, it's a funny word, is what I call the massively financed, highly coordinated juggernaut. What has been called, it's the Israel lobby, which sometimes is called the Jewish lobby, and I hardly correct people on that anymore. That is the PACs and the major denominations and the advocacy groups, like the ADL and the Jewish American Jewish Committee and all of those folks. That's the Jewish establishment, and it is a formidable foe, and they will fight very hard.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say, in answer to Becca's question, which is very well taken, very well put, we were tried to be very conscious of male, female, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, young, old, and we were more successful in some ways than in others. The area in which we failed most was that Nadia is the only woman among 6, I think, plenary speakers. However, I think you only counted 2 women among all the speakers. In fact, there are 9 and 10 if you count Danya Mustafa, who just led a workshop on activism. So we almost had half women. What else? We have 2 Palestinians here, 2 Muslim Palestinians, 3 Jews. That's a little unbalanced, but we did try in the national, or the plenary speakers, for people who had some kind of national stature, and all of these people do, and all of the plenary speakers do. And the workshops, that's where we had the bulk of our women. And Danya is under 30, bless her heart, and she did a whole lot of work as a speaker, as an organizer, and everything. Among the organizers of the conference, the vast majority were women. So I don't know whether that makes any difference, but women are activists. We failed most in age, and I can say that quite honestly because I think of everybody involved in this whole conference, I am the 2nd oldest. And anybody who's been around for 40 years working on this problem is clearly old. So here's a young woman, not under 30, but young. So anyway, we did try, but it's an endemic problem getting a lot of women and a lot of youth in a conference like this. I should also say, FOSNA has a youth witness conference or trip coming up. Is that right? To Palestine for youth. Okay. So anyway, thank you, Becca. It was a good criticism, a good comment. So, Sue.
Could I say something related? I'm not sure if this is good timing for this, but I was wondering if everyone who helped organize this conference could stand up and be recognized. There's so many people.
Yeah, okay, we have a question here or a comment?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about the need for new Palestinian leadership. I think maybe what we could concentrate on and what we really need is new American leadership.
Yes. Okay, Josh has the last comment and then we're...
Yeah, just very briefly, I know that we on the panel have said a lot about how well-financed and powerful some of our opponents are in this struggle, but also let's not over-exaggerate it too. Like for example, when this bus ad campaign rolled out in Chapel Hill, they started getting pressure to take down the ads. So I called up the city councilor who was getting the so-called pressure, and I said, how many phone calls have you received? And she said, 3. That's a lot of pressure. And Chapel Hill, bless their soul, they have the most open and transparent local government I've ever seen. You can go online and you can actually read email communications that have been received by the city councilors. So I went and I looked at them, and they were running about 50-50, pro and con. And of the pro ones, there were definitely a lot of Jewish community members who were in support of the ads. And so, you know, this notion that there's this huge, all-powerful, all-consuming opponent that we're up against, yes, it's true in some respects, but not in other respects. And what we're seeing in Charlotte at the DNC, when it was rammed through after 3 fake votes, the Jerusalem resolution, is that advocacy for Israel is very much a top-down affair these days, and that the power to control the discourse has been almost completely ceded, and it's been ceded to us, people who are advocating for human rights. So don't be intimidated. That's what I want to leave you with. Don't be intimidated by the amount of money that can be thrown to stop these campaigns, because guess what? They can't be stopped. If you look at the remarks of Howard Core, the president or executive director of AIPAC from a few years ago, he talked in apocalyptic terms about how successful we are being. They are scared of what we're doing, And that's how we have to maintain it in our minds, that we are the powerful ones because we have truth and justice and righteousness on our side.
I just want to thank all of these speakers who are marvelous, and I don't feel quite as discouraged as I did at the beginning. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you so much. As an MC, it's been interesting to realize how tough acts to follow these really all are. So I'd like to invite Jan up real quick to make an important announcement.
And Becca, we offered scholarships to any young people who wanted to come. So we tried, we did the best we could. Couple of quick announcements. In your packet, you have a card that says you want to be involved, you want to stay involved, you want to find out more, you want to be connected to the movement more. If you're interested, please take out that card, and there are boxes to put them in. Secondly, in your packet and elsewhere are evaluation forms, and we're looking forward to getting those from you. So thank you for both of those things. And the meeting of people who want to stay involved is going to be on November 5th at the Peace Center at 5:30 p.m. So if you're here and you want to connect more, November 5th in the evening at the Peace Center. Thanks.
I'm going to steal your microphone. Janice thanked a couple of us last night. I think all of us, of all of the organizers in this whole conference, has to thank, most thanks go to Janice herself, who did a huge amount of work. So.
Yes. I was going to say, Sue kind of preempted us. I want all the organizers to stand again. And should we have them come up front? Come on up front. Everyone who was involved in organizing, come on up front. And I think you'll see the gender imbalance. Come on up front. Huh?
And while they're coming up, let me say that this could not have happened without the hard work of Rita Erickson. So give her a hand.
Yeah. These two, let me have, I came out in, when was it? The end of March. Janet put out a desperate call and said, some of our people are getting sick. We don't know if we can pull this conference off. And we came out, we had the power right in that room already. Then it expanded, and they did incredible work. And look at the people that surrounded them, from about 4 or 5 to work hard with heavy labor. And I can't thank you all enough for what you have done to bring this together. Would you introduce everyone that's up here?
Well, just before she does that, I have to say something. One of the things I like to say is that many are called, but few step up to the plate. However, the people up here really represents a small number of people who did step up to the plate. Last night, I made a list of all the volunteers who have helped us. There are 75 volunteers who really, helped us put this thing and pull this thing together. And so they're all, no matter how small or how big, there's so many people who helped us. And I'm so very moved and filled with gratitude with our community in Albuquerque who really came together to pull this thing off. And Chelsea, you come up here too. I don't want anybody to be missed. I know Musa doesn't want to be up on stage, but go ahead, Janice. You can
Armin.
Security people are probably out.
Where's
yeah, they're unaware. Sue, videographers, Robbie. Come here, Robbie. Come on. Get up here.
Armin Shakarian, who taught me a little bit about Armenia, made the registration process totally smooth. He was amazing. Cedar and the budget, yes. Cedar Erickson was an incredible support and worked really hard all weekend. George Mudeking came back from Palestine and taught us a lot about what he had seen, and he was consistently hardworking. Bernadette Garcia is responsible for having us here at that venue, and we give her our thanks. Iris Keltz, writer and journalist, worked hard. Iris Suskerman took care of all the videography, and man, that was a big job. Kathy was what kept me going, so my thanks to Kathy. Danya's gonna lead the youth charge into the future. I'm sorry?
Oh, yeah. And if they haven't looked at the Gaza A Child's View art exhibit?
Yes. So the child's art exhibit from Gaza was done by Fida and Rita and her sister and Iktamal. And
if you haven't looked at that already, please go out and see the A View from Gaza art exhibit in the registration hall.
So Peggy was wonderful, and her role was to keep us in the light, in the love light, and she was able to do that. Mike supplied all the sound work and all the projector setup. Yeah. Becky, you've heard all weekend. She's a wonderful organizer. Melinda did amazing media work, and you noticed that Channel 4 was here today, and it's going to be aired at 6 and 6:30 and 10.
Laurie, who won't come up here. She's sitting in the audience. Laurie Rudolph.
Laurie Rudolph won't come up here, but she was a great behind-the-scenes help with media. Melinda and Laurie did the best media effort I've ever seen. Michelle was wonderful on many, many levels, and she was chained to Immanuel Parlor all weekend and didn't get to see a lot of sessions, so our thanks to her. Cindy did the beautiful table decorations and was worked with our venue, food, and facilities committee. Samia, the amazing food. Thank you, Samia. David was consistently there working on the budget. He's driven the shuttle all weekend and was a real linchpin of everything. Marcus is an all-around wonderful guy that you want in any effort that you do. The security people are here. Many thanks to Veterans for Peace, and I'm I hope I haven't left anybody out, but these are hardworking people.
Who else? Hunter is doing
Willard, yeah. Thank you, Willard. Yeah, I mean, you can almost feel the family effort that brought this group together, and this is the spirit that carried this out. This is a coalition, and I'm going to now challenge you. We've had a conference. Now we got to continue the political work and the advocacy and education in Albuquerque, and we look to you now to carry that forward with the others who are probably in the audience. Thank you so much for what you have given us. Danya, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to make an announcement about the fundraising we did for National SJP. On behalf of National SJP, we want to thank every single one of you. We raised $800, so we thank you so much.
All right. So let's stand and give them an applause. They gave the work that we benefited from. Whoop. Anybody lose their cell phone?
Here's a lost telephone.
Ah, there's somebody. Okay.
Is Marianne Torres here? I've got her book.
Marianne Torres lost her book. Yeah, don't leave. We have come through the home stretch. We're now at the finish line. So hold on. We have one more thing to do before we send you off. Yeah, two things. First, the announcement on the raffle.
Right, this is something you don't want to miss. If you've purchased a raffle ticket, we're going to be calling the names now. So we're going to start with this item, and Fida is going to draw a name for me here. Oh, very random, right? Alan Copa, I think. Alan Copa, or Koopa. If you're not here, you did not have to be present to win, so we're going to set it aside. Next, we'll draw for this very nice piece, Jesus with the Cross. Arlene Renshaw. Oh, great, come on up. Yay! And I think the most coveted piece, The shawl we'll do last. Come on up. Thank you. This is you? Yeah. Isn't that beautiful? Thank you. Absolutely. Congratulations. Thank you. Absolutely. And last we have, is that an A or an O? Okay, we think this is Sadi Afshari. Sadi Afshari. Oh, wonderful, great, congratulations. Did you okay with the pronunciation? Oh, good. And then just real quick, if Alan Cooper, maybe. Alan Cooper? He is here? Or you don't think he's here? Okay, well, we'll hold on to this item for him. He was the winner, and we've got the contact info. So thank you, everybody, for your patience through that, and congratulations to the winners.
Okay, the very last thing we want to do, I'd like to ask Assis Naim Atik to come up, our founder of Sabeel, and Dick Toll to come forward, who is the retired director of Friends of Sabeel, program director. Where is Assis? Here he comes. Okay, if you just hold a few minutes, we're at our final thing. Now, some of you were at the leadership conference in Portland a month ago, where Fosna really charted our whole new direction. And we had ordered a special thank you gift from Jerusalem for Dick Toll. And it didn't arrive in time, you know, slow transport or something. So I had to think quickly, and I remembered a story Dick told, that he had a dinner party at his house one night and had to go, and he was on the Columbia River fishing to bring back salmon for that dinner at his home. He didn't catch a thing. He was completely shut out. So he stopped at a fish store on the way back home, and he walked in and he told the fishmonger, the guy at the counter, he said, "I need a huge salmon for a big dinner party. I didn't catch a thing today, so I want you to throw the salmon over the counter so I can say I caught a salmon today." So we got a 3-foot salmon, and instead of giving him what we have tonight, we threw the salmon to him, and he caught it for the second time, and he took that home. But tonight we have something else. To thank him for 10 years of service to Sabeel, to Fosna, where he really built this organization up. This is a 35th conference, and he met with the committee and got this one launched. And how many people over this period do you estimate have attended a conference and benefited?
10 to 11,000.
10 to 11,000. So this movement has been built by his hard labor over the work and Sister Elaine in the office. So we want to thank you and honor you for what you have given to us, and we're not letting him go. He's on the development committee with Anne Franklin and many of us to raise funds continually for Sabeel because he's so good at it. So thank you, Dick, for all you have given us. And I want to ask Naim.
Yeah, before I present this gift that was done in Jerusalem, I just want to say a few words, so bear with me. I know we're all tired and like to get out, but I want to give you just a few ideas about the movement that we've had over the last 20 years. Sabeel started in the early 1990s in Jerusalem, and our first conference was in 1990, after my first book came out, Justice and Only Justice. And then the second conference was in 1996. By then, we had the conference at the YMCA, East Jerusalem, and we had maybe 200, 300 people. I can't remember exactly. And after the conference, I came up to 2 women, one from the UK, Janet Davis, and one from the States, Betsy Barlow. She was teaching at the University of Michigan, and a woman was totally dedicated to the Palestinian issue. She worked teaching children in southern Lebanon Palestinian children. So as I said to them, we need it. I feel God is continuing to lead us to start or to continue this work, this ministry. Would you please help me in starting a movement in the United States to Betsy Barlow and to Jan Davis to start the movement in the UK? And both of them said yes. So this is the way it started. Betsy Barlow came back, and in addition to her work at the University of Michigan, she started Friends of Sabeel. And she laid the foundation of that. Then, a number of years later, she came and she said, I think I need to step down, but what do you think about asking Dick Toll to take over? Well, I knew Dick from seminary because we were schoolmates almost in Berkeley, California. So I approached Dick, and I had, well, Dick can tell you the story, but anyway, I invited Dick to take over from Betsy, and he accepted. And I don't know how many months later, Dick resigned from his church, where he was the rector. He was the main minister, the main pastor, and he dedicated his ministry for the work of Friends of Sabeel, FOSNA, in North America. And I had a longer presentation about Dick, but I'm gonna just say a few words. Dick put actually Sabeel on the map of the US, and he connected with Jewish organizations and with Muslim organizations. He recruited people to come to the international Sabeel conferences in Jerusalem. And usually we had almost 100 people from the United States every time. So Dick also kept educating and updating himself. So every year he would come at least one time, sometimes more than once, to come back to Palestine and Israel. And he would look around. Sometimes he would bring few people just to lead them and show them around. I don't know, I know we had a good number of Catholics with us, but one of the great bishops of the Catholic Church, who's very much dedicated to justice, is Bishop Gumbleton from the Detroit area. And Dick once, we invited Bishop Gumbleton, and Dick brought Bishop Gumbleton alone. And he brought him back and spent 1 week taking this bishop, just showing him. And Gumbleton was going to Iraq all the time. But he had been way back in 1964. He'd been to visit our area, and he was not there because he dedicated his ministry for justice with the Iraqi people. So Dick brought him there. It was an amazing experience for the Bishop Gumbleton. So I feel I am thankful to God for the dedication of Dick Toll to the ministry of justice. I know he will continue with us. I only pray for health, for good health, for him and for Elaine, his wife. I want to also thank Elaine for putting up with him. Come, Elaine. Come, Elaine. I want to thank God for Elaine, for putting up with this young man, because many times he would leave home in Portland, Oregon, and he will come to Jerusalem, bringing groups and coming to conferences. And so I thank God also for Elaine, for her support, for her encouragement to Dick, and for the hospitality that they have given me many times, staying with them in their home in Portland. So I am full of admiration for Dick and Elaine. I'm thankful to God for their ministry with us. And on behalf of Sabeel, Jerusalem, on behalf of FOSNA in the United States. And I'm thankful nowadays that we have new leadership at Sabeel with Don and with John Erickson. And so I thank God for them. And on behalf of Sabeel, I want to give Dick and Elaine this gift from Jerusalem, but I'd like to read. And this was done by a Palestinian Armenian. So, you know, what's the name of our friend here? They're Armen, you know. So this is a wonderful, it says here, مركز لاهوت التحرر الفلسطيني, Palestinian Liberation Theology Center, Sabeel in Arabic and in English. And then inside we have to Canon Dictol. Canon is a position in the Episcopal Church where Dick served, with gratitude for a decade of visionary leadership and inspired service in advancing justice and peace in Palestine and Israel. Let us continue the journey until, and this is a quote from the Bible, steadfast love and faithfulness meet, righteousness and peace kiss each other. From Jerusalem, Sabeel, Jerusalem, and Friends of Sabeel, North America, 2012. So, with our love.
Just a very quick word of thank you, thank you, thank you. I've known this man since 1964, and I have learned many, many things from him about what it means to be a Christian. Thank you, Naeem. And for Don, I'm so grateful that you have picked up the torch. Go, go, go. And also, 50 years of marriage we're celebrating this month. So.
Great. Well, God bless you both. Thank you so much for all you've given us. Okay. Just a couple thoughts as we go and before the benediction. Seeing this last panel, I had made a number of notes of what I wanted to highlight. It was all covered, so I really don't have to say that. But a couple of comments on it. You know, the discourse is changing. You know, at recent Sabeel conferences, maybe a year ago, you really wouldn't have the level of analysis, focuses on the end of two states, the challenge of one state now, and BDS is just a natural part of what we are going to do. So the challenge is out there, the discourse is changing, we're in a new, very hopeful time. And I distinguish between hope and optimism. Maybe it's my theology, maybe it's my background, but I see optimism, and it depends on how you define it, but I see optimism as very much depending on my feelings, and often my individual feelings, how things are going today. A bad breakfast, a lack of sleep last night, then I get bad news, I look at emails and see another home demolished and everything else, and I get I lose my optimism. Hope is something different. I think hope is grounded in a vision. The Bible says, where there is no vision, the people will perish. We need a vision of where we're going. And we know that involves liberation, it involves justice, it involves peace. We have that vision cast out for us. But hope also means working collaboratively, in coalition. We're working closely with the Jewish community. Now we're working across denominational lines. A week ago, I was at a conference hosted by the U.S. Campaign, Jewish Voice for Peace, and FOSNA. We had 8 denominations and 4 additional peace groups represented, leadership, and we committed now we're going to move on a national campaign collectively among the churches and the interfaith community on boycott. And this has not happened before. That is a change. And we need our Muslim friends desperately. As Sydney said, we are organizing already in the churches for winning divestment next time. In a couple weeks, we'll be in Chicago with the Israeli-Palestinian Mission Network. Already, we're organizing on divestment, a boycott campaign to challenge our pension funds. The discourse is really changed. But at the end of the day, you know, who is it that said all politics is local? Tip O'Neill. All politics is local. Not all, but if we're not organized and strong at the local level, we're not going to pull this off. At the Presbyterian Convention, I was there with some of you working on the divestment and everything else, and we recognized that the committee that had to make that decision was totally uneducated. Well, we were able to educate the committee, and we got a 3-to-1 vote from the committee on divestment. But a lot of people are coming from various areas of the country, and they don't know the story. So we count on stronger organizations, and FOSNA, John Erickson and I are really committed to have more regional organizations like what you're going to do in Albuquerque in the coming weeks and months. Organize, organize, organize. And we think of 3 areas. Now, I'll end with this. All 3 may happen at the, may have different groups involved, but education, it's a 3-pronged stool. Education, get into churches with Kairos, Kairos US, Kairos Palestine, Steadfast Hope. Organize in your local community, across lines, exchanges with the mosque, with those synagogues who are willing to dialogue about justice. I'm tired of dialogue that takes justice off the platform. I have no time for that. But if there's dialogue with justice, okay. So education is one prong of our 3-leg stool. Second, advocacy. And this we mean advocating for a just position if it's your city council or in your denomination or with other faith communities. Advocate for certain positions of change within those organizations. And the third one, not everybody is ready for this, but we're closer and it's going to happen, is political action. The billboard campaigns, the boycott campaign, many things like this. So these are the 3-pronged stool of where we're moving now and acting. So we just invite you now to come and join us and in this movement, working across faith, across coalition, secular, atheist, agnostic, Muslim, Christian, Jew, all denominations, including evangelicals. So let's close now. I want to give a benediction, a prayer to send us off. Thank you for your patience. We're down to the faithful remnant, all 50 of us who are left, but with a small committed group. Who is it?